You know a movie's in trouble when it costs $250 million and still manages to make less cultural noise than a tumbleweed. That's John Carter, the movie that should have been Star Wars before Star Wars, but somehow became Cowboys and Aliens after Cowboys and Aliens. When John Carter hit theaters in 2012, it wasn't just a box office flop. It was a corporate catastrophe. The kind of disaster that gets whispered about in studio backlots like a ghost story, a $263 million space epic that forgot to tell anyone it was epic. The irony? It shouldn't have failed. Not even a little. Because the source material, A Princess of Mars, written in 1912 by Edgar Rice Burroughs, is the blueprint for every space fantasy that came after it. Before Luke Skywalker, before Flash Gordon, before Avatar's glowing blue tree people, there was John Carter, the soldier who died on Earth and woke up on Mars, leaping across alien dunes with the power of gravity and plot armor. It's got everything. Lost civilizations, flying warships, princesses with PhDs, political intrigue, arena fights, romance, tragedy, the whole mythic sci-fi starter pack. But Disney didn't market it like that. They had one job: sell this as the original space opera, the ancestor of Star Wars and Dune. Instead, the trailer was 2 minutes of beige confusion. Sand rocks a guy named John. No Mars, no context, no excitement. Just a Civil War vet wandering into a cave, teleporting to nowhere, and punching green people for reasons unknown. And the title. Oh, the title. By dropping Of Mars, Disney turned an interplanetary adventure into something that sounded like a Ken Burns documentary. John Carter. Who's that? A bank manager? A local sheriff? The trailer looked like the Lone Ranger got lost in space. Test audiences thought it was a Western, which, to be fair, it is for about 10 minutes before he starts doing interplanetary parkour. But by then, the marketing had already doomed it. The trailer was muted orange, the music generic, the dialogue forgettable. It was like they'd hired an AI to remove anything that might make the film interesting. And that's a tragedy, because underneath all that sand and CGI was something weirdly wonderful. The story of John Carter, a broken man transported to a dying world, has weight. He's not just saving a planet, he's saving himself. Barsoom, that's what the Martians call Mars, is a world of crumbling empires and extinct oceans where everyone's fighting over scraps of a dying atmosphere. It's Lawrence of Arabia meets Flash Gordon with a touch of Gladiator. But the movie never let that emotional core breathe. Instead of showing us the wonder of this strange new world, it spent half its runtime explaining the Therns, immortal, shape-shifting overlords who manipulate civilizations across the universe, because apparently someone thought ancient space priests would make things more relatable. Spoiler, it didn't. The film jammed together plot lines from A Princess of Mars, The Gods of Mars, and The Warlord of Mars, then duct-taped them into one overstuffed script. The result? A story that's simultaneously too simple and too complicated, like watching a history documentary edited by a toddler with ADHD. And yet, for all its narrative chaos, John Carter isn't a bad movie. It's just misunderstood. The visuals? Gorgeous. Barsoom's red deserts stretch endlessly under pale twin moons. The airships drift like whales through a blood-orange sky. Dejah Thoris, played by Lynn Collins, is radiant, brilliant, and armed to the teeth. Tars Tarkas, the four-armed Martian warrior voiced by Willem Dafoe, is a tragic alien dad with a moral compass sturdier than most humans. And Taylor Kitsch, as Carter, gives it his all, even if his all sometimes feels like it's buried under a mountain of green screen. But here's where another missed opportunity lies. Dejah Thoris. In Burroughs' books, she's not just a princess. She's a scientist, an engineer, a literal pilot. She's one of the smartest people on Barsoom, a woman who designs flying machines and debates planetary science. She's not waiting to be rescued. She's out there navigating politics, commanding armies, and occasionally rescuing John Carter. In the movie, that fire, that intellect, that sense of agency gets buried under layers of exposition and costume design. They hint at her brilliance. A few lines here, a gadget there, but it's all surface level. What could have been one of the most dynamic sci-fi heroines since Leia Organa was flattened into a generic, strong female character who spends more time reacting to the plot than driving it. And that's a tragic omission, because Dejah could have been the heart and mind of this film, a counterpart to Carter's brute force heroism, not a narrative accessory. If they'd gotten that right, if they'd let her fly, let her invent, let her argue, build, lead, the movie could have been a completely different beast. It could have slapped harder than Dune because it had the bones of something even grander: romance, mythology, and science fiction all woven together. But instead of world building, the film rushes through it like it's late for a board meeting. Barsoom never feels lived in. Its cities are beautiful but empty. Its politics feel like set dressing, and its people, especially the Tharks, never get the cultural depth the books gave them. The pacing is frantic where it should be majestic, like the film is afraid of its own imagination. This movie could have been improved in so many simple ways. Slow it down. Let us feel Barsoom, the cracked red soil, the hum of its dying atmosphere, the melancholy grandeur of a civilization on the brink. Give us time to understand the Tharks, their tribal culture, their moral code, their pain. Let Deja Thoris be the scientist she was written to be, the woman who teaches Carter about Mars rather than the one who just follows him through it. And maybe, most importantly, trust the story. Trust that audiences can handle old-fashioned sincerity and mythic scale without a dozen quips per minute. Because the bones of John Carter are strong. With tighter pacing, richer world building, and a little courage to lean into its pulp roots, it could have been the modern epic, the one that bridged Star Wars and Dune in a single red-dusted breath. Instead, it became a case study in studio meddling and marketing confusion. The tone, though, is where it all falls apart. Is it an epic, a romance, a fish-out-of-water comedy? The movie never decides. One minute, it's poetic and sweeping. The next, it's a quip fest straight out of 2000's Marvel. It wants to be Avatar, but with the swagger of Indiana Jones, and ends up somewhere between Prince of Persia and Attack of the Clones. But here's the cruel twist. John Carter didn't fail because audiences rejected it. It failed because they never really saw it. The marketing buried its identity under sand and corporate fear. By the time it hit theaters, the buzz was toxic. Too expensive, too weird, too late. And released just a week before the Hunger Games, it never stood a chance. $263 million vanished into the Martian dust, taking Disney's live-action credibility with it. It became shorthand for box office bomb, a movie mocked by people who never watched it and adored by the few who did. Because once you get past the clunky exposition and the beige title, John Carter is actually kind of great. It's sincere. It believes in heroism, destiny, and love across worlds. It's not cynical or snarky, it's pure pulp dream stuff. And that's why it failed. Because in 2012, sincerity wasn't trending. So yes, John Carter is a mess. But it's a glorious mess. It's the kind of movie that reaches for the stars, misses spectacularly, and still lands in your heart. The kind of story that deserved a franchise, but got a funeral. Because when you strip away the botched marketing, the studio panic, and the title that sounds like a tax attorney, what's left is a grand, romantic, old-fashioned adventure about a man who found a second life among the stars. It's not perfect, but it's not boring. And in the long history of cinematic flops, that's something worth remembering. Some movies fail because they're bad. John Carter failed because it was sold by people who didn't understand it. And somewhere out there, on a dusty red planet under twin moons, it's still waiting to be rediscovered. The lost legend that taught Hollywood how not to launch a galaxy.